and welcome to Growing Up Conscious. My channel is for kids from age 0 to 92 or 102 even, but the focus on like how can we look at growing in our consciousness at any age, and then also how to empower youth specifically to have the tools to stay conscious, because many youth come in very conscious, but then because of all the programming in society and trying to fit in and any number of things, that kids that start out very joyful and expressive and creative sometimes can end up really making themselves very small and feeling a wrongness when they could be conscious and could be choosing joy. I had an interview today, a Facebook Live, where we talked for 20 minutes about the various different labels that kids and adults might take on in this reality. And I wanted to share some of the highlights today in the Growing Up Conscious format. And just for those of you that don't know me, I did training. First, I was trained as a teacher. I got my master's in elementary and special education. And I remember my first year of teaching in New Hampshire. I was making less than $10,000 a year, but I really wanted to get started after I graduated and get going on teaching, because I was excited to get into the classroom. And as most people know, college education, no matter how proficient it is not going to prepare you for being in the classroom with the kids. So my first year of teaching, like I think probably most people, was quite a wake-up call. My first classroom was a mix of all different kinds of kids with all different kinds of labels in a small town in New Hampshire. And that aspect of knowing that what I learned about teaching subjects like reading, writing, and math, I was pretty proficient in that area. There's still a lot to learn, but enough that I could get by with my first year of teaching. And I had some behavioral class information as well. But when you put a mix of all different kids together that all have special needs, it's a whole different challenge. And I came across, probably for the first time, like how we end up kind of shrinking our kids in the system we have, not because we don't have caring teachers. Some of the most amazing people that I've come across in this lifetime has been some of my coworkers working in public schools and giving their heart and soul to like make a difference in kids' lives. So it's not that we don't have amazing teachers. Yes, we have some that aren't great, like in any system, but it's more where we're trying to kind of funnel kids through a particular kind of system. So that when I interviewed today, the main thing I wanted to kind of highlight in Growing Up Conscious today is when you end up with a label, either of your own choice or you've gotten it through schooling or any number of things, labels like ADD, ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, learning disability, dyslexia, communication disorder. There's all sorts of labels. It could be OCD, it could be manic depressive. There's lots of labels out there, and labels can be very useful in terms of like the way I think of it now is like sometimes those labels help you get a little extra love in the process of getting through school and a little extra attention for what you specifically might need. So I realize that sometimes is needed. So it's not so much like that I'm opposed to the labels, but it's more that we don't necessarily teach kids or adults that once you get that label, that doesn't define you. So if you have a label, let's say anxiety disorder, I came across more than one student by high school that would use the anxiety disorder label to hold them back. Not that you can't use things to your advantage. Like, let's say you really don't want to do X, Y, Z. You can say, hey, I have an anxiety disorder. I prefer not to do that. There's nothing wrong with asking for what works for you based on your disorder, but just be careful if you're a parent or a student or a mentor of someone that you don't have someone like box themselves in by a label. So with anxiety disorder, if you start like using that as like, oh, I have anxiety about this, I have anxiety about that, I have anxiety about that, therefore I don't have as much conscious choice. That doesn't need to be the case. If you've been labeled with ADD or an anxiety disorder, it's a very good chance that you are consciously aware of thoughts, feelings, and emotions of people all around you. And it's a capacity, it's a talent. And then, you know, the kids that get labeled ADD, especially males, it's because their body feels that and needs to move sometimes. And that, you know, schools often don't set it up so that kids can get that movement as a way to release it. And unfortunately, a lot of kids these days don't get as much nature time as well. So this is something I could talk for hours about, but the main point I'm making today in regards to staying conscious with it and getting back to joy and getting back to the targets that you have in your life. If you have a label, how can you use it to your advantage instead of your disadvantage? So if you have, for instance, dyslexia, you know, if you have that label, I still work with quite a few kids and parents where they have the label dyslexia, meaning that they don't necessarily learn reading and writing the same way other kids do. They might not be as visual in regards to remembering what words look like. So they could confuse the words like who and how. And that doesn't mean that they aren't some of the most creative, brilliant people on the planet, but they might not come across that way if their spelling and reading is lower. So they're a group of people that can use some support in terms of, you know, spell check and various different things. But then how can you actually, in a school setting, ask for what you need? Ask the teacher, hey, I might not be able to express this in written format, but can I have an oral test of some kind of so that I can let you know what I know without having to try to spell the words, or any number of things. So look at whatever label it is. Like, I've worked with some really brilliant kids that have the label of autism. And if anybody who knows with autism that you know, you can have kids with 140 IQs that you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell it right off the bat if they have autism, because you sometimes can access it directly and sometimes not. But one of my favorite memories in school is a student I have that was fascinated with the Russian language. He was an English student and he didn't know enough Russian to do this. But when we got to the state testing, he was like, I wonder if I can take this in Russian. Made me laugh so much. But there was so much about his school day when he was in elementary school, that same student who was very brilliant in many areas, that was very stressful. So we had to keep looking at how can we use his capacities and talents to his advantage, and how can we let his community and his teachers know how to reinforce strengths instead of keep triggering the weaknesses. So if you'd like to know more about that, or would like to talk to me one-on-one on any of these topics, for people that listen to this YouTube channel or listen to the interview that I just did on Facebook Live this morning, I'm open to doing 20, 30-minute consults to see if we're a good match, because I love to work with parents or adults that have been labeled in a way that it's holding them back, and they would instead like to shift that and get access to like reaching their targets in life and having more access to joy and conscious choice. So that's it for today. Feel free to comment and let me know your experiences if you've are a parent or you're actually a child or an adult with a label, and let me know what you've tried that's worked, and also like if you have questions, I'd love to hear them. So that's it for now. And can you get the gift that you be and express that in the world? Thanks. Bye.